It's almost midnight, Watchers. Are you ready to join the Midnight Watchers to talk about their favorite strange and scary movies?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Midnight Watchers. This is Koji,
This is Quentin.
And I'm Jennifer.
and this is episode 6 of Midnight Watchers. I turned my hat around so you can tell it's a whole different episode. And since we've already talked about where everyone's doing, I'm going to ask you guys what did you guys do over the weekend during your self quarantine? Did you guys do anything fun, or is it every day pretty much the same day?
I was swimming with my son most of the time, so
Where'd you guys swim?
just at home. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. It was definitely that kind of weekend where swimming would have been nice. I'll tell you that. It was hot. It
Yeah.
was hot. I just got work done. My kid is at his dad's on the weekend, so that's my one time to get stuff for me done. So, Ivy, what are you doing? Oh my God! Speaking of kids, okay, no, I'm
Kids.
recording right now.
All three of us have kids.
Oh my God!
I actually drove to Santa Barbara with my son, and that's where I went to school. And we went to this. My favorite place in the world is this pier that goes about like a mile into the ocean. It's usually really empty, so I really love that. But Santa Barbara and Ventura were crazy. There were like millions of people on the beaches, and there was like everybody was there. Nobody was wearing masks. We were like the only people wearing masks because I guess in Ventura County they're not required. So
But is Santa Barbara in Ventura County?
yeah, or Santa Barbara County.
Oh.
So Santa Barbara County, sorry. It was not. Yeah, they didn't really. Nobody was wearing masks, so we were like the only ones. So it's kind of freaky and weird. But we found a part of the beach that we hung out for a little bit, and we did our thing. That nobody was around. But it was really really weird to see that many people together and not wearing masks. But what do I know?
That's weird. I didn't know it was like it up there.
Yeah, Orange County, I hear, is the same way actually right now. But let's talk about episode 6. Today we are going to talk about Santa Sangre. Is that how you say it, guys? I don't know.
Santa Sangre. It's Spanish, means holy blood.
Oh, okay, there you go. I don't know Spanish, so let me read the description for you guys. It's a former circus artist escapes from a mental hospital to rejoin his armless mother, the leader of a strange religious cult, and is forced to enact brutal murders in her name as he becomes her arms. The director is Alejandro Jodorowsky. Then the writer
Jodorowsky.
Sorry, I'm totally butchering all the names. He also wrote it, and the story was by Roberto Leone and a couple more. And one thing I thought was really, really interesting was Roger Ebert. Let me read a quote real quick. He said, he believed it carried the moral message of a genuinely opposing evil rather than celebrating it like most contemporary horror films. He described it as one of the greatest and waited patiently for he's been waiting for it patiently through countless dead teenager movies. So this was done in 1989, and I saw it on Amazon for $3.99, I think, is how much I paid for it. But Quentin, I know you recommended it. What did you think of this?
Yeah, so I have to confess that actually I haven't rewatched it because I watched it several times over the years, and I just don't feel like it's a very celebratory movie to watch during the pandemic because there's something really real about that movie that disturbs me. My first time watching it actually in the movie theater in 1989 on Valentine's Day, I believe it was February something, right? And I didn't even know it was Valentine's Day. It was my freshman year, Valentine's Day, and this guy that I really had a crush on invited me to watch Santa Sangre in the UC theater, which was at Berkeley, and then. Yeah, we went to see this movie, and then I totally told him I had a crush on him after the movie but he was totally straight because he didn't believe in Valentine's Day, so it was just really odd Valentine's Day. That's why I have a very deep connection to the movie. I've never seen any Jodorowsky movies before, but then eventually I caught up with a little bit. I think the one before it's called El Topo. You know, he's a Polish director. He's from Poland, so. Polish director, and he's definitely a very brilliant director that was renowned. You know, his films have gone to Cannes and all this stuff. And he was actually at one point supposed to direct Dune. So Jodorowsky was going to make Dune before I think David Lynch made it, and there was like a huge documentary about what would his version of Dune to be like. And I think Santa Sangre is an interesting transitional work because it's his first kind of like horror film per se. because before the movies he made, it's almost really art house and transgressive cinema, and also always about religion. Yes, and Sangre, which is holy blood, refers to the cult in the movie that the mother started, you know. And I had a really weird relationship with my mom, so I watched it. I totally agree. It's like, yeah, you will kind of want your mom killed, but at the same time, she comes back to haunt you. So.
On that note, Jennifer, what did you think of this movie?
Yeah, there was some like weird mommy dearest vibes going on for sure. I really liked it. I felt like it was one of those movies that was just so artistically done and rich. It's definitely like worth watching multiple viewings. And I'd seen most of The Holy Mountain, so I, for some reason, fell asleep or just didn't finish it. So I'm a little familiar with Jodorowsky's work and his style, so to say. And yeah, I mean, this movie.
Wait, what was The Holy Mountain about? I tried watching it several times, but I could not get through it.
It's so weird. It's just like a hodgepodge of weird imagery and like I think animals are getting killed in it, and it's just like.
There was a Jesus figure. Was it a Messiah figure in it? That was like a Messiah figure, like a Jesus figure in it.
Sorry, I lost you. I think I had a.
Sorry. Was there like a Jesus figure in El Topo, Holy Mountain?
That sounds about right. I remember a guy kind of looking like that, dressed that way, being paraded around. It's been a while. I think I saw it maybe just like 9 or 10 years ago. But I've always wanted to watch it all, hopefully for this podcast, but I think Santa Sangre was more appropriate. Yeah, great movie. I mean, really one of the best filmmakers around. This was real art. How do you do that? Surrealism, right? Absurdism. It's such a fine line to be able to create stuff that is in that world. Really, really.
Yeah, I had a really hard time watching this movie. I didn't really enjoy it. I know I started it like 4 or 5 times and I just couldn't really get into it. I was just having I didn't know what was going on. And I liked like moments of it, like the elephant going over and kind of the tattoo thing was awesome to me. But after a while, I just was having a hard time like staying in the movie. Maybe I'm just not like, you guys seem to really, really like it, but I had a really hard time. I just was like, I want something else to happen. But maybe I'm not very sophisticated in my movie watching. So when I watch movies, I like Final Destination. So maybe that's one of the problems. But Quentin, what am I missing when I watch this movie?
I think the story is very interesting. It's basically about this kid who grew, you know, he's basically it was started in a mental institution, right? So the doctors are trying to figure out why is this guy crazy. And it flashes back to his childhood where he was actually the son of this dad who's son of the circus owner, and then the circus owner is having a relationship with the tattoo lady. And then in the circus he met this girl, you know, that they really connected, but because of, you know, and her mother was running this cult but the dad ends up killing the mother because the mother threw acid on him when she was having the sex with the tattoo lady, and then the dad in anger, you know, cut off her arms and killed herself. And that brings us back to present, where this guy is trying to reintegrate into society, was taking a job taking care of Down syndrome children, right? And then obviously the mother spirit came back and possessed him, and he thought the mother was alive, still around, but at the end it was just him. It's just about the whole ideology of the mother possessing you even after she died, because in that bond is very powerful. But at the end that bond was broken because through the girl, that she actually rescued the girl from this tattoo lady. So I kind of like that. My favorite sequence is probably the killing the tattoo lady. That was a cool sequence I've watched like over 100 times. I always rewind it because that's my way of watching horror films. I like certain parts of it, I keep watching it, and I want to understand what makes this sequence really dynamic, you know. And the way it's like, you know, Jodorowsky in some way is a master in creating this kind of mood and this world, you know. But this world is very depressing because it is a real world. It's it's set in Mexico, and you really see in the 80s, wow, this is like Mexico is the third world, and all these crazy things could have happened. But at the same time, he's able to put this magic in this really depressing world. And one of the most depressing the most scary scene for me was that elephant. Like, they give this elephant a funeral, they threw it down, and then there's all these really hungry people came out and tried to like cut off this elephant and just take the part of elephant home, which is sort of like what the third world is like, and there is something like so I could never watch. It's hard for me to watch that sequence again, because just knowing that, wow, there is such real poverty out in the world, and we live in the first world, and that sequence is just that the sequence of like pure hunger, of having to eat corpses, elephant corpse is really hard to watch for me.
And Jennifer,
and I think killing the mother was also I thought actually that was kind of stylish, and just cutting her off her arm, and then he just kind of killed himself. So, but yeah, I just think it's a very poetic film. I just don't know. But at the same time, it's a disturbing film. It's not just like you can watch this movie that you forget, because most of my memory is from 1989.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, tell me what's your favorite moment from the film? What am I missing?
My favorite moment, yeah, the elephant was kind of a sad. That whole sequence was sad, especially seeing the blood coming out of the trunk. I don't know if that actually happens with elephants, depending on the injury or sickness they have. But that was elephants are just such sweet, gentle creatures, Dumbo, So yeah, that was kind of like, what the heck? Like, what is this about? And I thought that the cult element, I guess it goes back to Jodorowsky's sort of religious themes in his work, but I was kind of like, why did it have the cult element? The story I thought stood well on its own, just the circus idea of this circus family and infidelity and childhood memories, healing childhood trauma. Like, I love all that. So the cult thing, I guess, just tried to just add sort of this other element to the movie, just to kind of make it, I don't know, have some other themes, I guess. That's his style, though. That's his stilo. What was like one of my favorite parts of the movie? I don't know. I did like that it was, it kind of tied. It didn't like end in absurdity totally, like in a Lynchian confusing way, because it ended with the idea of love, right? Love conquers all. And what's his name? Phoenix, right? He was seeking love his whole life. He didn't get it, right? And then that's what breaks the spell, so to say. So I love that. It's just a nice like story to it, with that part, as opposed to just a bunch of surreal absurdity, weird, weird artsy filmmaking stuff,
I just want to make a correction about Jodorowsky. Actually, so he is actually Jewish Ukrainian parents. He's Jewish Ukrainian, but born in Chile. Was studying in Chile, then moved to Paris. I didn't know. I kept thinking he's Polish. I don't know why.
Well, his last name, right? His last name has like an Eastern European sound to it.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's a correction. But he's been working a long time in Mexico City, so that's why. So I guess like he went to Paris, married somebody, and then he went back to Mexico. He was working between Mexico City and Paris, and then have an avant-garde theater troupe called Panic Movement. And that's eventually that's how I guess Mexico City evolved as a place to shoot. I mean, I'm very interested in Mexico because I don't think we see so much of it, and I'm sure like it's great to shoot there because it's probably not expensive. But I don't think we shoot that much in Mexico. And actually, Mexico is very romantic. Like you can totally shoot a romantic comedy about this couple going to Mexico and having a great time and be very beautiful. And
I think it probably just depends on where you go in Mexico. Because
I love Tijuana. It's very beautiful. Like
really?
You don't go to and it's a great time. I mean, I didn't know really well. So you know that James Cameron did build a studio in the border of Tijuana where they have all the water tanks, right? And that's where Titanic was shot and a lot of other stuff. But yeah, Tijuana is actually really nice. I enjoyed it, but you have to move a little bit further in. You go to the beaches, and you really see the Mexican life, and not just at the border. And the reason why I realized that going to Tijuana was really the trip that convinced me that I could have a kid by myself, because I was there and I saw like all these kids selling flowers with their parents, and you said, oh my God, that's like. And then I went to this Chinese restaurant in the center of Tijuana, and then all these toddlers were just sleeping on the couches like that. And it's like, oh wow, this is real life. I mean, if these people could have kids with such minimal resources, I'm sure I can have a kid. And on top of that, you realize, hey, these are the kids. Now these are the kids that are the lucky ones, because why? They know what world is like at the very beginning. They go sell flowers with the mother. They're the ones that were given. They were the ones that were given a lot of parental love, because they know what the world's like. And for me, I think that's sort of how I feel I should raise my kids, because just to let them know the real world. Because I think I was growing up, I was shielded so much from my parents, so I sort of went into horror movies. But yeah.
Well, that's what Jennifer. That's what we talked about in the podcast on the Guy Code. Is that in the past, there was a lot more shielding of kids and having kids have a separate life than the adults. And now much more so the adults and the kids their lives are much more connected and combined. Even like in like America, you have like situations where like I take my son to my meetings, or I take my son to places with me, as opposed to before. Like when I was a kid in summer, it was like, hey, come back at 6 for dinner, like, and then we'll see you at 6 o'clock for dinner. And that was it. And there's like no parental guidance for me between when I left home and when I came back from home, unless I needed money or to be driven or something like that. But that's interesting. That's the first time I ever heard that. Did you, I mean, being a mother, I mean, since you're the only female on this podcast, Jennifer, what did you think of the mother-son relationship? How, did it make you think about your own mother and son relationship?
Well, watching it, I was like, oh my God, I hope I'm doing things okay. Because I find myself like, raining down on my son, because I feel like there's things that are important to me. We all have things that we value that we're trying to instill in our kids, but we know that our kids aren't always going to follow everything that we did, and they may go a completely different way, and we may be misled or wrong in terms of what to prioritize. I think I'm hard on my son, because I am trying to instill discipline, hard work. I'm trying to make him really love school and be very academic and organized. Okay, good. Sorry, he's in the background. But my mom was obviously not like this mom in Sangre, but she was not very affectionate. She didn't give a lot of physical affection, and also words of affirmation, none of that stuff. She was a total, militant, sort of non-emotionally available, Asian immigrant mother who didn't speak very much English.
So what's your mother's ethnicity, out of curiosity?
She's Korean.
Oh.
Yeah, so we've been talking about the what's going on in North Korea. She was like texting, or I got her on Kakao Talk, which is like the WhatsApp for Korea. And when I was over there during the beginning of quarantine, I helped her download Kakao Talk on her phone, and she's so excited. So now she can talk to her sisters in Korea for free, whereas before it was always long distance. But yeah, she grew up obviously in the Korean War, right? She's in her 70s. So, and she didn't move here till her like 30s, like mid 30s or something, or early 30s. So she kind of moved here kind of late. So I feel like her whole youth was spent there. And she didn't get to go to college. So what was I saying about that? Yeah, about the movie. Yeah, I mean, mothers and sons, there's a certain special relationship there. There's an intimacy, just like dads and daughters, right? Daddy's girls. There's something about mama boys. That's why there's that term, mama's boy. There's something to that. I obviously, I shouldn't say it's obvious, but I do not, emotionally abuse my son. I don't even know why.
I mean, I guess she was sort of like, I think I mean, it's really a parental horror story. If you look at you look at Son of Sangre, because those parents were like just awful parents. You know, the dad made the son get this horrible tattoo.
Yes, that was so sad.
That is considered the thing that makes them become men, right? And then you have the mother who's completely like, just all, because also the mother is trying to enforce this like horrible ideology in the son, because just like he's trying to he's trying to have the son even protect, to sort of like have the son, and also what do you call those followers, to stop those bulldozers from like bulldozing her temple, right? And that again is, for me, was kind of like a very heartbreaking scene, because if as a son and a child you think about, well, what is it like a child? Is your mom is supposed to be this high priestess, but she has no power. It's just about her. It's about that destruction of this power in that scene that really deeply affect the child and traumatize the child, to later on create this mythology that the mother actually does come back, even though she was killed and she was totally powerless, despite her kind of like crazy personality, right?
Yeah, those scenes reminded me of Santa Muerte, right? You guys know Santa Muerte? She's like she's the goddess of death, but usually for like drug dealers, prostitutes, gangsters, then really not wealthy. You've seen pictures of her, right. But in like a lot of...
okay. So Jodorowsky probably draw that from...
Yeah, because
those... from that figure,
Because like the Catholic Church hates like that people pray to her, but there are entire communities that are like dedicated to this thing. And it's really, really interesting. So that when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I think that's a tie to that kind of that because it's Christian, but not really, because it's not really.
But it's a Mexican thing, right? Particularly like a South American thing, right?
Yeah,
so definitely Jodorowsky. If you grew up in Chile, you would know that.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was built on that, but it's also a critique on religion, I guess. The critique on because Jodorowsky is very interested in critiquing and playing with these religious symbolism, right? Yeah. Whether it's Christian and beyond. I don't know. At the end, but I think at the end was a hopeful ending, because at the end, even though the kid, even though the guy, was arrested and then or was going to be arrested, but he sort of like came through and saved, the love of his life, basically, which he met in the circus, right? So I think it's a hopeful film, I guess.
Yeah, it's hopeful. That's what was cool. I didn't expect it. I thought it was going to have some really super depressing low ending,
But I guess the movie came out in the time period when horror movies were still not considered. I guess critics really hate horror movies back in the 80s, and 89 is still the same way. So I remember reading all the reviews in the papers, and people really don't get this movie anyway. But they like Jodorowsky's the previous movies that Jodorowsky has made. So I think, but still, I think this, So I think it's one thing that his movies became a little bit more horror and mainstream, but at the same time, it also got bashed by critics.
Except for Roger Ebert, who apparently really, really liked this movie.
I mean, he sort of gets what it is about, right? I mean,
Of all the people, I was really surprised by how effusive he was of that movie. But
I figure, like, it might not be a bad job to like take care of like Down syndrome kids, I just thought it's so hilarious. Like he takes these Down syndrome kids to kind of like, was he the caretaker for these kids? He was, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Or he was part of that group, or he was grouped into this Down syndrome kind of thing.
Wait, so he
was grouped in, I thought.
Oh, he was grouped in. Okay, yeah. I just thought it might not be, and then he goes ahead and kill this person, kill the tattoo lady.
Oh my god! Yeah, such a weird movie. Yeah, beautiful though. I loved it. So fun, funky movie.
Well, let's get to the point where we could either tell our listeners or people who are watching it whether they should watch this movie or not. I'll count to 3. You can tell me if you like it or not. I think we all know who's going to answer what. But let's just do it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, so Quentin and Jennifer said yes, and I, of course, said don't waste your time. But maybe that's just me. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and watching these movies, and I can't wait to watch more movies with you guys. And to everyone for everyone who's listening, please rate, review, and subscribe. It does make a difference to to subscribe and to rate us because it really helps us. So please rate us on iTunes or on Apple Podcasts, I guess now, and Google Podcasts. Those are usually the best places to do it. And then please let us know if there's a certain movie you want us to watch. Let us know. It'll be really great for us to review movies that you guys actually want us to see. VHS, the movie, the episode right before this was recommended by my friend Scott, who's been listening to this podcast. So thank you, Scott, and thank you everyone for listening. And have a really great day or night or whenever you're listening to this podcast. Bye, guys.
Oh yeah,
Thank you.
shout out to
Take care.
Brandon. Shout out to Brandon who also recommended VHS if he's listening.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.